Hello, and welcome to my presentation titled Visualizing Hypothesis Testing. Before we begin, I would first like to reference a statement made by a multitude of writers employed by the National Geographic as it relates to the content within this presentation. The article states, "Science wouldn't be science without the facts, research, and numbers to back up all those theories." Can you imagine Albert Einstein trying to promote his famous theory of relativity without any numbers, research, or the famous formula E equals mc squared? Within this presentation, I will be covering the following topics: testing for the mean, comparing two groups, efficiency comparison, correlation test, important takeaways, questions, and lastly, the references. So let us begin. In Visualization 1, test for a mean, my null hypothesis was, in the case of Acme widget, most of the widgets have defects. The alternative hypothesis is, in the case of Acme widget, most of the widgets are defect-free. In Visualization 2, comparing two groups, my null hypothesis was, on average, both leagues have the same number of home run hitters. The alternative hypothesis is the average home run hitters differ slightly between both leagues. In Visualization 3, you will see an example of efficiency comparison. Here, the null hypothesis was the mean efficiency is equal between the red and blue teams, and the alternative hypothesis was the mean efficiency are not equal between the red and blue teams. In Visualization 4, you will notice a difference in the graph's layout. So instead of having a two-tailed test like the previous ones, it was more applicable to utilize a scatter chart. However, a null hypothesis, the heavier the industrial van, the lower the miles per gallon. In the alternative hypothesis, the weight does not affect the van's miles per gallon, is still implemented. And now it is time for the important takeaways. While the average person would assume hypothesis testing should be left to the scientists due to its complexity, we must not forget how useful it can be to an organization's operations whose audience needs data that can back up one statement. So what better way to support a statement than to conduct a hypothesis test? But you may be asking yourself, why would anybody do that? The objective or purpose for a hypothesis test is to compile factual data that will either support or reject a hypothesis. As with most people, we were taught about mean, median, and mode in high school math. Well, within the third slide, we look at a testing the mean for Acme widget deficiencies to either support the null hypothesis or to reject it. When it comes time to translate the results of the test, you are looking at the p-value in conjunction to the alpha. In better terms, if the p-value is smaller than the alpha, then the null is rejected. On the flip side, if the p-value is larger than the alpha, then we would accept the null hypothesis. Now, if you were to look over at the visualization important takeaways, I will now discuss that. While there is not enough tests that rely solely on visualizations, utilizing them in such a way to compare data will make things a lot easier when it comes to draw a conclusion, which you can see through the previous slides. Also, if you so choose to conduct a test, it is also important to know that there are different types of tests you can conduct, as well as the graphs they are portrayed. For example, in slides 3 and 4, you will see a two-tailed test, and on slide 6, you will see a scattered plot. But what you don't see is a left tail or a right tail test. And this now concludes my presentation. But as I begun with a quote, I saw fit to end with a quote as well. This one comes from Isaac Newton, which states the best and safest method of philosophizing seems to be first to inquire diligently into the property of things and establishing those properties by experiments, and then to proceed more slowly into hypothesis for explanation of them. So at this time, I would like to thank you for watching, and the floor is now open for any discussions or questions.